Okay, so looking on YouTube, I can't really find any videos on cutting a carbon fork for a road bike. So I'm going to do it all using homemade tools. So here's my carbon fork. It goes with this Cannondale frame set I purchased that I'm putting together myself. Here's what I bought. I went to Lowe's and I got 2 of these clamps, and I'm going to use them as my guide. I'm going to put them on the steer tube and tighten very close together and then cut in between the space. Now I hadn't decided where on the tube I'm going to cut yet for my final cut, so what I'm going to do is attach them real high and do a practice cut first. So you can see that I've tightened down the clamps onto the head tube, and I've put them very narrow. So you can see I've tightened the clamps down on the steer tube at the very top. Here's the steer tube. This is where I intend on cutting. I'm going to use that line in between the two as my guide. Alright, so I got a 32 tooth hacksaw blade at Lowe's and these 2 clamps, and I'm using the 2 clamps as my guide. Of course, this isn't my final cutting location. This is just a test cut. Okay, so I've cut in deep enough that I'm hitting my nut on both sides of the clamps, so I'm going to have to rotate the clamps. Okay, so I completed the cut. Now I'm going to unscrew the clamp and see how it came out. Here's the end of the cut. It ended up looking pretty good. Perfectly 90 degrees. Good test cut. So now I'm going to go to the bike and I'm going to put it together, the whole headset, and mark where I want my actual cut to be. So here's the headset of the bike. You can see the top bearings. I'm going to grease them and put them back in. And then here are the pieces to the bottom. So this is the bottom bearing. The tapered end goes up. I'm going to grease it and put it in. Okay, so I got everything assembled from bottom to top, and you can see that I've got just a little too much space there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark with a pencil a line all the way around, and then I'm going to cut just below that line. So there's the line that I marked with my pencil all the way around, and I'm going to set up my clamps just below that line. Okay, so you can see I clamped down so that I'm just below the line that I drew on the head tube, and now what I'm going to do is cut in between those 2 clamps, and whenever I reach these nuts, then I'm going to rotate so that I can continue the cut. To cut, I'm just using a regular old Walmart hacksaw. I went to Lowe's and I bought a 32 tooth hacksaw blade and swapped out the one that came with it. I've had this hacksaw for years. You can see that it's a 32 tooth. That's what everybody recommends for cutting carbon fiber. They say that if you're cutting an aluminum steer tube that you can use 24 tooth. So there's the completed cut. You can see it's generally 90 degrees. Good enough. I've got it all reassembled. I did all the greasing. You can see that The steer tube is just barely recessed in, which is exactly how I want it. And now I'm going to take the cap, drop it down in there, and I'll be ready to go.